Hey everyone, welcome to the Masterclass here with Jay from Mobo. Hi Jay.
Hey, good morning.
Yeah, hello everyone. So I am so pumped and so grateful, Jay. I just can't tell you how amazing it is to have you on here, your sort of depth and knowledge and your experience. For those of you, I'm not going to go on about Jay's sort of pedigree too much, just to say that it's exceptional. People flying from all over the world to see Jay. And he's one of my favorite humans too, which is amazing because sometimes a lot of knowledge doesn't necessarily mean you're a great guy, and Jay's a great guy. I am going to put it out there, Jay, that we've kind of met in the flesh about twice.
Yep.
And both times I attended a running workshop that you presented and you just blew my mind. And I treated your knee. And then the other time I also treated your knee. What's up with that, skiing into trees and things?
It's doing well. Yes, it's doing well. It's I've taken good care of it lately, so all good.
Yeah, we need to meet up in the flesh and have some fun and learn and share knowledge. Okay.
Agreed.
So today, I'm not going to go too much into the intro, or big upping Jay. You can read about it. We're going to put links. He's got two really, really amazing books that if you're running and you haven't read, you really need to read. The Mobo board will be for people that attend this class, there'll be a 20% discount, which will only last for about a week. So you've got to hustle on that. And yeah, we'll send a link to Jay and you can check him out and, give him a follow. He's got excellent content on Instagram, just with short clips on mobilizing and strength and conditioning. So here we go. The most important part of your body, arguably, when you're running. So without much further ado, one more thing. If you've got questions, don't put them in the column on the right, put them down where there's an ask a question, please. And then at the end of the session, we'll answer questions. Okay, so there we go, Jay. I'm going to hand it over to you.
Sounds good. Thanks, Lawrence, and thanks everybody at Interrunner. I hope this will be a fun little session and a good use of your time. We are going to, talk about some content, but most importantly, I'm going to do some stuff with you that you'll be able to do to improve yourself. So, I think that what I hope to get across to you guys is this, right? So this whole journey that you and Lawrence are doing is really focused on trying to improve a lot of control of your spine, your hips, right? And so there's sort of two ways you can think about the way we move and the way we run. And so some people think about a top-down approach, right? So having good core control, ability to counter rotate your torso from your pelvis, and also having really good control of your hips, right? So Lawrence always talks about supple hips and having good stability in those in that hip complex, and that couldn't be any more important. But what's also important is a bottom-up approach, right, or kind of from the ground up. And so this one gets into feet, right? And so you think about this. Anytime you've got two bones, right? So you've got a thigh and a shin bone, right? Our femur, our tibia. Those bones need to roll and glide over each other, right? And so it's not exactly a hinge joint, but there's not a lot of stability at the knee or the elbow, right? It's a lot of torque going through those because they're long levers and big bones, but there's not much stability demand there needed. But when you look up at the hip, you've got that ball and socket joint. And ball and socket joints move a whole lot, right? They need more stability. And we look at the foot, right? We've got a whole lot of joints, okay? And you think about the more joints you've got, the more demand for stability. Same thing for your spine, right? The reason why core control is so important is because the spine has a lot of segments to it. And when you have a lot of those segments, you need more demand for stability. And so what I want to talk today is about getting us proper mobility and stability through this entire foot complex. A lot of people, when we think about the foot, we think, oh, great, I have this foot and I've got, a big Achilles tendon, a calf muscle that I can see, right? And we want to just get nice, strong calves. There's a big push right now in literature to strengthen the soleus and the gastroc muscles because people are realizing through some lab research that, those muscles are very strong and important in running. And they absolutely are. And you want to make sure you have a nice, strong calf complex. But I always tell people, you can't put a jet engine on a paper airplane. It just doesn't work, right? And if you try and strengthen those propulsive muscles and the stability mechanism you got, the entire foot is not up to par, what happens is you wind up with a lot of instability, right? We see changes the way all that torque in the calf is being transmitted to the foot, and that causes a lot of increase in stress in different parts of the foot, right? It might shift things over to one of your lesser metatarsals, right? And you might get a stress fracture. It might shift things up over into the shin, and you might get shin splints. It might shift things down into torque and plantar fascia, and you get plantar fascial problems, right? So we can fix problems. What I don't want you to think about today is I don't want people to be so worried and sweating about injury diagnosis. If you fix these problems in the feet, little approaches today, the stress will go back to the parts of the foot it's supposed to be on, right? And that's the big thing is I want to make sure we're clear that if you fix the problem, symptoms get better. If you just focus on fixing symptoms, you're going to be chasing your tail for a long time, okay? So again, our goal today is to help you learn some mobility assessments and some stability assessments that we can do right now to kind of fix some things and help you run more efficiently, right? Help you cut, jump, stand, stabilize, right? Those of you doing yoga, when you do yoga, you're in a tree pose, for example, balancing isn't stability, right? Balancing is I'm kind of wobbling everywhere, my trunk and my hip all over the place, and that's kind of more reactive. Proactive is I know how to get my foot down on the ground, right? I know Lawrence is big on talking about, contacting the outside of the heel and rolling through that big toe. And that's absolutely critical, right? And on that, I'm going to share a little analogy I use with a lot of my folks about the lunar lander. So lunar lander comes down and lands on Mars, right? It doesn't just go thunk down, right? What happens is these little legs of the lunar lander are compliant, right? So when it comes down to land on Mars, it doesn't just go kaboom, right? It needs to be compliant, come down nice and soft. And so let's talk about how the lunar lander equates to the foot. When you look at the foot, there's this thing that little geeky people like me talk about. It's called center of pressure. Don't worry about the fancy terms, but everyone's in contact on the outside of the foot, right? So here's my foot. Inside toe, outside toe. Everybody lands on the outside of the foot. That center of pressure goes along the outside column and then transfers across the ball of the foot and through the big toe, right? And every gait study it's been done for forever shows this. Some people might land more on the heel, right? And so that line goes more from the heel across the foot, across the ball of the foot and big toe. Some people land more in the midfoot. Guess what? Still goes outside of the foot, across the ball of the foot, outside of the big toe. Some people land more forefoot. Interestingly enough, those people who land forefoot, that center of pressure goes from midfoot outside, then back over and back forward again, right? Because your foot does still get a little bit more purchase on the ground. So the point I'm saying is that outside to inside transition, right, is letting the foot adapt to the ground. I don't like using the words pronate and supinate a whole lot because people think that pronation is bad and supination is good. Both are very, very, very important terms, right? So let's kind of shelve complex stuff for a second and think simple. If that lunar lander can come down to the ground and be compliant, right, then we can settle and get good power, and I can let that center of pressure move from the outside of the foot towards the inside of the foot, and then I can push off, right? So it looks like this. I will basically land somewhere outside. The forefoot will adapt down the ground, and when I can adapt, the interesting thing is I get my big toe to the ground, and then I can push straight forward, right? And that's the critical thing. So let's talk about this different analogy for a second. I want everybody to look at their hands, okay? So I want you to look at your thumb, and I want you to look at your thumb and notice how many joints do you have in your thumb. You have 1, 2 joints in your thumb, right? I want you to look at your fingers. You've got 1, 2, 3 joints in each finger, right? So your finger and your thumb are very, very different mechanically. Your finger's job is to curl around things. Your thumb's job is to lock and oppose, okay? If anybody out there tries to go drive a nail into a piece of wood, right? You don't hammer with your thumb off the shaft because you can't control what you're doing. You lock that thumb around the shaft to drive for solid support, okay? So our thumb has a very different role than our fingers do, okay? Now, some of you are like, I hope it's a foot course. It is, don't worry. Okay, if you look at the foot, okay, so you can take your own shoe and sock off and look at your own foot right now. I want you to notice the same thing. If you look at your little toes, right, you've got 1, 2, 3 joints in each little toe, and you've got 2 joints in your big toe, okay? Your little toe's job, their supposed to be there, right, to pick things up off the floor, right? They evolved to grasp things off the ground. They're also picking socks up, right? And so they have a very specific purpose to grab and curl. The big toe's job is not to grab and curl. It's to drive downward, okay? So it's supposed to get nice and stable and strong and drive down. And when you allow the ball of the foot on the inside to contact the ground, so we'll talk today about how to getting adaptation from your rear foot and your midfoot to make sure that big toe can get down on the ground. Once it's on the ground, okay, it needs to drive down. When it drives down, it actually builds support to the arch. And when the arch is solid and stable, then therefore what? This whole foot isn't wobbly and rocking around, right? It's nice and solid. So I talked about the jet engine on paper airplane model, right? If the foot can't adapt down to the ground properly, if it's stuck up for some reason, right, you'll never get the big toe to adapt to ground without seeing collapse upstream. That's unstable. Or if you can get the big toe to adapt down the ground, but then you can't control that wobble, that torsion, right? Then things are unstable, right? So each of those problems, a mobility problem or a stability problem, could impact the way you steer and stabilize your foot. And guess what? We're going to show you guys assessments and fixes for both those today. Okay, so I'm going to have a whole lecture class, but I just want people to understand why this is important. And just one more little thing to put on here real quick. It's embarrassing to me, the state of care for physical therapy and assessment and biomechanics for a long time has been telling people to do marble curls, right? Where we kind of just pick up marbles and put them in one bucket to another, or towel curls. You'll still see these exercises out there in the internet today. If you look around for foot exercises, I just want to show you why that mindset might not be the right thing to do. If you do towel curls, marble pickups, what you're doing is, yes, you're getting muscles to work, but no one really cares if muscles work. We care about strategies, right? And you're teaching your body to lift the first metatarsal head, the ball of the foot, off the ground over and over and over again, okay? No one walks and stands and runs like that, okay? So you're encouraging a strategy which uses long flexors up on the shin. It doesn't identify control of the muscles in the foot, and it doesn't teach a skill that translates over in the sports that you want to do. Okay, so I think everybody here, yeah, we like to train, like to be proactive, like to think about prehab, making ourselves robust, but all those things we're doing aren't just stuff we're doing, right? They need to translate into our sport, or else you're wasting your time. So the things that we're going to talk about today are very functional and are very effective and have a role. All right. Any questions so far, Lawrence?
No, that's excellent. Thank you, Jay. Keep that knowledge coming. I hope everyone's had their coffee this morning. Yeah, cool. A lot of knowledge comes out of this, man. You're like a gushing fountain, Jay. Thank you. That's amazing.
Good. All right, so let's do our first little assessment. Okay, so what I'm going to have everybody do, I want you to stand up for me, and just change my screen. I'm going to lock this down for a smidge. Sorry, guys. Okay, so you can't see the top of it, but that's okay right now. It's more important you see down below. So what your first assessment is going to be, in fact, you don't have to look at the screen. I want everybody to stand on one foot, either foot you want to, right? You just stand on it, and all I want you to do is just, let's have you stand there for about 10, 20 seconds, right? I'm going to be talking in front of you as I'm pointing some things, but you keep staying on one leg. And I want you to ask yourself, do you feel weight more on the outside of your foot? Do you feel weight more evenly split across the ball of the foot? Or do you feel weight more aligned over the inside of the foot? Okay, and just, there's no right or wrong answers here, guys. Just take your time with this. Again, we're just standing on one leg, right? And just think about where you notice the balance point. Okay, and now let's do the same thing to the opposite foot. So that foot goes down on the ground. Okay, again, same thing, because people's feet are often different, right? So we're standing on one leg again. So just ask yourself, do you feel balanced more on the outside of the foot, more evenly split across the ball of the foot, or more across the inside of the big toe? Okay, so And let me show you one little tip as well. A lot of people tend to, when we stand on one leg, we tend to stand, a lot of us feel, let's actually ask you a second question, sorry. two little things in this test. First thing is easy to fix. So those of you, when you stand on one leg, if you notice that you feel your weight back on the heel, right? So you really don't even notice much load up in the forefoot. You can see I'm kind of exaggerating this by leaning backwards right now. But if I lean back from my torso, okay, what happens is that weight goes back to the heel. Let me drop down so I can see this real quick. So I want everybody to do me a favor. If you're somebody who feels weight on your heel when you stand, you tend to be what I call a backseat person. You can see how that lumbar spine curve on you got pretty big. I want you to take your hand, and I want you to put it on your belly button. And I want to take your second hand, and you're standing up right now. I'm just kneeling so I can stay in the camera. Hand on belly button, hand on chest. What I want you to do, I want you to drop your left hand and your chest down only to the point where you feel weight go evenly split between heel and ball of foot. Okay? And this is really, really, really important. I know Lawrence has done a bunch of stuff on posture awareness with you guys. I want to make sure you can feel the difference between somebody who stands way back in the back seat, right, versus somebody who can actually keep weight evenly split with the foot. Because we talk about how to work on our stability work, right? If you're somebody who throws a lot of lumbar extension, backseat mechanics into things, it's really hard to take a lot of your feet. So I just want to give you a little primer to make sure that that front to back balance awareness is there. So those of you who are in the back seat, just take that upper hand at chest, drop it forward a little bit until you feel weight evenly split between the heel and the ball of the foot. Okay, so that's our front to back assessment. Now, so again, forgive me with that, let's go back to our in to outside assessment, right? So those of you who felt weight on the evenly split across the ball of the foot, great. You're ready to move straight into some stability training, and we'll get there in a few minutes. Those of you who felt weight on the inside of the big toe, right, are also ready to go straight into stability assessments. Some of you likely felt weight inside of the foot and actually kind of fell over, kind of collapsed to the inside, or maybe had your foot torque in, right? That's a sign you really, really, really need to work on some foot stability work. But again, you can go straight into stability work. However, some of you likely felt weight outside of the foot. And a lot of people, right, because we don't have good control, right, because our stability mechanisms have built on kind of curling up. You can see if I go to here, I just collapse inward, right? Because I don't have the curtness of that ball of the foot. So I want to make sure I build that nice solid torque, right? You see I can drive that big toe down to lift the arch up. And if I carry a balance mechanism in, which has been reliant on this, right? Which is just, you can see I'm just shifting the outside of my foot and ankle, that's not very stable. And that lunar lander model we talked about from before, right? That foot, instead of actually coming down and dapping that big toe to the ground, it gets over here and wobbles, or it goes cupping down, okay? And accentuates how fast it comes into the ground. And then we lose stability through our system. So the first thing I'm gonna do today, I'm gonna show you guys 2 ways to help adapt your foot to the ground, right? So that lunar lander be compliant, all right? So first one I'm gonna show you guys is gonna be a rear foot correction, right? So look at the feet. This is your heel bone is called your calcaneus, right? So that calcaneus bone needs to be able to twist in and out. And then second I'm going to show you is going to be more of a soft tissue fascial modification to get the outside of the foot to adapt down the ground. Okay, so let's do these now. Those of you who felt your balance point in the middle of the foot or inside of the foot, there's nothing wrong with doing these. You're welcome to follow along and try them. I feel like getting to know your foot's important. Most people just kind of put it in the shoe and stand back and hope for the best. I want to let you know feet are safe. They're your feet, right? So let's show you how to do some rear foot mobilizations, and we'll talk about midfoot. So what you're going to do, I'm going to grab this little bench here, okay, just because it's easier to visualize. You can do this on the ground, but I'm going to show you on the bench. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my foot, I'm using my right foot for this, okay? And so I'm going to take my right hand, put it on my right knee, okay? And now I'm going to take my left hand, I'm going to do is I'm going to just cup my rear foot, right? So I'm just taking my hand and just kind of just cupping nice and gently. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take maybe about 5 pounds of pressure, and imagine I'm cupping this heel bone. Imagine I can take this and just pull it away, right? So I'm just distracting the heel a little bit, Okay, so that's the first thing to do. Part one is just distract. Okay, so get back to position here, right? So right hand goes to the right knee, left hand goes around the heel bone. I'm going to distract out a little bit. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to do is notice my left arm, you can see in the camera, is straight. It's not bent. Okay, because what you're going to do is you're going to use your body weight for this. You're going to just fall on top the heel bone. Okay, so all my weight right now is driving down through my left hand into my right heel. Okay, if you take your hand off, your leg can kind of want to flop up like this. Okay, that's why I like to keep the hand here. But again, I'm cupping the heel, distracting out, and I'm just leaning on that heel. Okay, and we're going to hold this for about 15 seconds. 15, 14, 13, 12, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. After you're done, I want you to wiggle. Okay. The reason I wiggle, what you're doing is you're taking this bone and trying to form called the joint capsule, which is a big Ziploc bag around the heel. We're going to try it again. Okay, we're going to do 2 more times that. So again, right hand is on that right knee. I'm going to grab that left heel, just drag out again. I'm coming forward. Sink your entire body weight over that heel bone. Now I want to be clear about this. I'm literally sinking about half my body weight over here. So this is not a push your tricep out exercise, right? This is I'm leaning in. Okay. What happens is we are deforming the capsule, right? We're trying to stretch the tissues around there. And we're also giving some input to we have these little things called mechanoreceptors. Mechanoreceptors are like little joint circuits that tell us our bodies where we are in space. All right, we're going to come off of here. We're going to wiggle around again. And because after you form that joint and get this mechanoreceptor stimulated, we have fluid in here called synovial fluid. We can also call it joint juice if you want. But that joint juice needs to be moved around so we can get some more lubrication of the joint. All right, last one. Again, we're going to take our heel or our hand. We're going to go distract out in the heel of our foot. We're going to fall down again. Okay. So again, this is basically a self-mobilization of the calcaneus. I do these all the time with my athletes. Lawrence does them all the time with him. And guess what? You can do this on yourself. Okay, pretty simple. Again, those of you who go, I wonder if I'm pushing hard enough. You should have about half your body weight at least kind of falling in that heel. So it's quite a lot. Those of you who feel like there's a lot of pressure on the rest of your leg, if you want to, you can put a towel or a pillow here if you need to, if it bugs you. But again, the goal is that we're using this as a block, right, to make sure my shin's not going to kind of collapse out the way. And all that load is directed here, right, into the calcaneus, into that rear foot. All right, that's our 15 seconds. We're going to come off. We're going to wiggle. Okay, so let's do a little self-assessment again. I would like you to now go back to one leg, right? And I just want you to stand that one foot again and tell me, does that feel any different in terms of getting weight off the outside of your foot a little bit more to the inside? Okay. If that does, guess what? That just confirms the fact that you are somebody who needs to work on rear foot mobility. Okay. So remember we said, if I tend to have a balance strategy over towards the outside, this is wobbly and tippy and unstable. I want to make sure I can get that foot to adapt to the ground first. I want to put the best possible foot and the best possible you into every workout. So if your balance strategy is over here and you say, oh, we do my foot stability work, guess what? This is not going to give you anything productive, right? So I want to help you get that foot to roll down properly, to get even contact across the ball of the foot. Okay, so if you're somebody who did that test, first of all, and then we did our mobilizations and you didn't feel anything, guess what? There's no need to do a calcaneus mobilization before you do stability work or go run or train or anything else, right? There's no need to, because we just showed you that you don't have a problem with that mobility and you did a fix and there's no change. Okay, so that's how you know if you need this or not. But a lot of people out there do. Okay, so that's mobilization number 1. Let's go to number 2. So number 2, I asked you guys to get out a lacrosse ball, right? So I have one here as well. and I'm going to show you 2 different ways you can do this. So lacrosse ball, and actually made this video on our Mobo Instagram yesterday just to kind of show people on this. This is not the old just put your foot on the ball and roll your foot around. This feels nice. That's not what this is at all. In fact, those of you who need this will find this feels pretty miserable. It's not very comfortable. It's not painful, but it's going to be stiff on some of you. So let me show you this ball needs to be. So this is the top of the foot. This is the bottom of the foot. This is the outside. This is the inside, right? So you can see how this is my 5th metatarsal and my 4th bones, right? So we label these always from the inside as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so we're going to put the ball behind the ball of the foot, right? So ball of foot's where you kind of just pivot over, right? So behind the ball of the foot, between these 5th and 4th foot bones, the ball's going to stay right about here, okay? Not on the inside, not coming back, outside of the foot. Your heel's going to be on the ground. We're not doing this. Heel's going to stay on the ground, and all of our motion is going to come from our hips pivoting. It's not from your foot rolling at all. Okay, so let me demo this. So I'm going to take my ball. I'm putting it on the ground. It's behind the ball of my foot. Back a little bit here. See a little higher. Okay, behind the ball of my foot, and my heel's on the ground. My left leg's on the ground too. Now, I want you to roll in to out. Some of you may find this feels totally fine. Some of you are going to go, whoa, there's some stiffness in there. When you find stiffness, what I want you to do for me is take your hands to your hips, and I want you to swivel your hips to the left and to the right, and to the left and to the right. I'm going to go right now for about 30 seconds or so. So again, all the motion is through my pelvis, kind of swiveling back and forth. Notice when you look at the screen for a second, look at the difference in this. See how my foot is not moving right now? It's not this. See how now as I'm moving, I'm allowing that ball to wiggle out to in, out to in? That's not what I want. So I want to make sure I keep that ball nice and stable. Some of you who knows you can't keep the ball still, I'll show you a trick you can do. You can take, pretend this is a wall, right? So pretend that stool is a wall. I can take that same setup we just did and just put your foot against the wall, and that way as you're pivoting, right, as you're swiveling your hips back and forth, right, you can't shift over in the wall anymore. So that's a tip you can do, just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. That's about 30 seconds. I want you to keep that ball in the same position as the outside, but now scoot your foot forward like a centimeter, right? Just literally a centimeter, not an inch. And same thing. So some of you may notice, wow, that really gets stiff again, right? So we're just twisting back and forth, trying to open up the outside of that foot. Okay. And I was talking for a little bit long with this, sorry, but normally I go about, 90 seconds, right? So a minute and a half. I'll do about 30 seconds in one spot, move foot slightly forward, move foot slightly forward again. 2 tips here. When you always hear that people who cut bagels go to the ER more than anybody else, okay? Be careful with this. But again, another tip, those of you who you do your twist, again, to keep this from moving back and forth, I like to actually use a half a lacrosse ball. So be careful when you cut these. But using a half a ball, the ball doesn't move, right? So it makes it much easier for you to actually get your rotation back and forth. So that's number 1 benefit. Number 2 benefit, you can imagine that some people have shorter feet, right? Smaller foot size. And so I find women, if you have about a 6.5 or smaller, it's really hard for you to keep this in proper position and get your heel down on the ground. You have 2 options. One is to take something like a book, right, or a towel, and just basically fold up out of that heel. That way it kind of levels off your foot a little bit more. But again, if you use the half of the lacrosse ball trick, it doesn't demand as much mobility compensation at your ankle, so it's much easier to do this. So get a bread knife, works really well. Make sure you're thinking, right, and not putting one hand anywhere near the blade, but you can cut that lacrosse ball in half, and it works much better. Okay, these are usually like $3 to $4 at your local running store, or you can order these online. They're easy. Okay, but let's go back to our assessment, right? So we just did a correct for our rear foot, and we did some mobility corrections, right, to fix that. It's called a soft tissue varus or a forefoot supinatus. Don't get caught up in terminology, but we just ease the mobility through the foot, right? So we're going to go back and stand on that one leg again, okay? And just let me know again, does that feel any better in terms of equal foot contact from outside ball of foot to inside? Okay, and a lot of you out there, okay, in my experience, about 75% of people really need to do this, okay, because it helps you lay that foot down, right, so that lunar lander can adapt down to the moon even easier by everything being nice and compliant. Okay, so here's the cool thing. That calcaneus mode we just talked about, it doesn't take very long. If you're somebody who knows the big difference pre and post in your calcaneus modes, we did. Remember, we set up position. We basically locked the arm out. We leaned in, right? We did about 15 seconds. Wiggle the bone back and forth. 15 seconds. Again, wiggle the bone back and forth. 15 seconds. Wiggle the bone. That took less than a minute, okay? And then we retested. If you're somebody who needs to do that, do me a favor. Before we do any stability work for the foot and ankle, I don't care if you do my stuff, someone else's stuff, your own coach's stuff, it's fine. Put a better rear foot mobility into your activity. Then we did our lateral column release, okay? So we used a lacrosse ball or a half lacrosse ball, right? Those of you who felt the difference between doing our mobilization, right, pre and post, okay? You're somebody who needs to do this before you're doing any type of stability work. Again, it takes a minute and a half. I know time's precious, but again, if you open up the outside of your foot, it helps tremendously. And here's why. Those of you who tend to stand, we have that kind of that outside balance kind of wobble back and forth, right? Guess what? If you carry that into your running, guess what happens? You've got that stiffness, and that lunar lander either is going to stay here for a little while, and you might be fine for a half a mile, 2 miles, whatever. But at some point in time, that balance mechanism is going to be impaired because all the muscles on the inside get fatigued from being in too much demand, and that foot, instead of actually staying here, goes kablam, right? And then we have a lot of compensations up top. So yes, we can steer things up top from the hip complex for sure, but that foot also has to play a role too. Okay, so put a better you into your training, right? So, questions on mobility so far?
Let's have a look at just the questions that they built up. Okay, yeah, we just get some questions that relate to these mobilization. So Anne asked, which joint of the big toe is used when pushing through the big toe? Is it the first big joint and then roll through to the second? How much pressure on the second joint? Or maybe a combination at the same time. Thank you.
Yeah. So good question. So when you look at, I'm going to show you my thumb real quick because it's hard. Well, I guess I'll show you my foot. So when we look at what the foot does, right? So here's the ball of my foot. And so when most of what we're talking about, right, is motion through here. Now you do have a joint, it's called your IP joint, your interphalangeal joint. You do have that bone, right, in the big toe, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about this big ball of foot down through here. That's where all that control comes from. And one little tip, right? So we always talk about muscles in our feet versus muscles that are up in our shin. If you curl your toes, right, as you can see how my toes actually curled from this IP joint right here, right? So that's straight, okay? That's curled. The muscles that curl this joint live up in my shin. That's not the muscles I want to talk about today, right? I'm not talking about mover muscles. I want to talk about stabilizer muscles. So the stabilizer muscles we're going to talk about right now, we begin just some stability work. Those muscles, they're called your abductor hallucis on the outside of the big toe, and the flexor hallucis brevis that comes in through here, and also some of your there's these deeper quadratus plantae muscle groups, and those actually help drive down, support, and stabilize. You also have muscles in the outside of our shin, our perineals, that come outside under the foot and actually attach way over here, right? So all those muscles act to ground this into the ground, right? My point is, we'll talk about stability right now for sure, but if you can't get this ball of foot down to the ground because of restriction here or restriction here, good luck trying to focus on the stability here, okay? But you saw, those of you who did those little fixes and did the pre-post right away, it takes, a minute or a minute and a half to see some differences. So it can get differences very quickly. And one note I should say, people say, do I have to do this for 4 weeks or 8 weeks or 2 months? That self-test we did is your answer, right? Everybody's different. Sometimes people do this once and they're like, wow, that made sense. Okay, they got things freed up. And then tomorrow, I want you to do, before you go do any balance work or you do your training yourself, do me a favor, do that same little single leg stance test. If you feel fine, meaning even weight across the ball of the foot, then guess what? You don't have to do it anymore. Okay. But if you're somebody who goes, you know what? I still feel like I went back more outside again. You need to do these mobilizations until you find this adapts nicely. Now, you're not doing anything which is more of a long-term process. These are kind of short-term adaptations. I find most people need to do these things for a few sessions to a few weeks before those differences are such that when you stand on one leg, you're nice and solid and stable from the get-go.
Okay. Thank you, Jay. It's amazing. This is going to relate a little bit back to kind of what I teach when running. I like people to be able to wiggle their toes when they run. Otherwise, I kind of feel they shifted too far forward and their toes are slamming down and you're locking up your foot. So weight even across the whole foot, should you still be able to wiggle toes?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. You don't want to. So let's tell you a simple cue, right? So when I talk to people all the time, like imagine you're at the grocery, okay, you got a shopping cart in front of you, and I know it sounds dumb to overthink about these things, but keep it really simple. If you have a shopping cart and you're walking through the aisle, you're just pushing the shopping cart, you're just going forward, right? What I don't want people to do is think, oh, I watched this webinar this morning and this guy said, really use your big toe. If people start to really try and like push and start to drive, what happens is I start to torque and wiggle outward, right? So I wanted to basically just, again, let that foot come down, allow that foot to roll through, and then just going straight forward, right? So it's not like you're like, locking your bicep into a curl, right? You're trying to allow that foot to adapt down the ground, and that forward motion comes from that intrinsic strength you built. You don't have to think about push through the big toe. We don't want to transfer those things over. I'm big, I know Lawrence is big on teaching awareness through spine and hips and kind of using some cues we run. I don't like to do anything more than a cue for runners in terms of feet, because I find if I have you think about trying to torque your foot in some weird way, people really make very strange compensations.
If you think, you stink.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thinking requires brain power, guys. Like, it's like, it's expensive. I mean, there's some time once in a while to do some things, but like for the most part, if you use too much cerebral cortex above your brainstem, what happens is you make that motor learning expensive. And guess what? Your form isn't very smooth and it costs more effort to run. That's defeating the whole purpose of why we're here, right?
Yeah. Okay, so soft adaptable feet. Cool.
All right. So
Yeah.
let's maybe hold the questions. Let's get into some stability work and then we'll have some more time in the
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. So we're going to talk about, we have 6 exercises I'm going to show you guys and for stability, right? And so 3 are going to use what you already have, which is just some bands that I asked you guys to get and a foam roller. And then 3 are going to use the Mobo, which I'll talk about a little bit later. So let's go through our little toe yoga exercise first. So I kind of hinted this earlier, right? I'm looking to teach you to build a strategy to use muscles within the foot versus muscles up in the shin, okay? This is our jet engine or paper airplane thing. If you put a nice, solid, stable structure, all that torque those calf muscles build, they're solid, right? But if this thing shows up floppy and unstable, all that torque through here is uncontrolled and dangerous. Okay, so let's talk about the proper way to do a toe yoga exercise. I know people have seen this a lot of times, but I'm going to show you 2 main problems that people screw up with all the time, and we're going to fix them right now. So I'm going to grab my lacrosse ball, and this is more of a visual than anything else, right? So I'm going to get down just so you can see here nice and easily. If I take my foot, you can notice it's very easy for me to do this, right? This is not hard in terms of muscular effort. It's really, really, really easy for me to separate my big toe and little toes, okay? I know some people talk about you should be able to raise each little toe individually. I think there's a line we cross that goes into stupid human tricks that's not required at all, right? So if you can do each toe individually, good for you. Okay, does that make you have any better foot stability? I've never seen this be proven in any of the gait research that I do. When I look at people who have like, you know, deficient foot stability versus good foot stability versus superhuman foot stability, you don't need to be crazy with little toes. Again, your job is to curl and pick up off the floor, and you can see how I lost contact here. That's not going to help me out. So I can care less about how fancy your little toe control is. I do care how good your big toe control is. All right, so let's do this together. What we're going to do is I'm going to teach you how to get the big toe down to the ground. I'm going to teach you the same exact cues I use. They're kind of weird, but just bear with me here. So I'm going to have my right foot in front of me. I'm going to put my my right index finger underneath the kind of the toenail right here, okay, under the big toe. And I'm going to lift up with my finger. So I'm passively raising the big toe up. And I want everybody to pretend a picture of my face is underneath the end of your big toe. And your job is to drive your big toe down so hard that you smash my face, okay? So I just want you targeted on down. We're not curling, right? Nobody's curling. We're lifting passively, and we're just driving down. And you're going to drive down and down and down. And you're going to keep driving down so hard, and you're going to allow your little toes to just float up off the floor. Little toes will now relax down the ground, and we're going to actively lift the big toe up. Again, if you want to use your hand to lift up right now, you can, right? But the main goal is you're wanting to, again, drive that big toe down, 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 down. If you look down at your toe, you should almost see that skin blanching, okay? It should be turning white, okay? Because you're pushing blood flow away for the time being. We're trying to really get some downward force. Keep that pushing down. Little toes will float up, right? And just allow that motion to happen. Get comfortable and confident in this. Now, the biggest problem I see, I'm going to shift to a front view for you here, is that people do this exercise. So watch, I'm going to take my hands out the way so you can see. They go big toe up, and they do this, and they go big toe down, they do this. So you see how I lost stability, right, through the inside of my arch. I just smeared everything down. That's not helpful. So what I'm going to show you a little tip you can use. Take your lacrosse ball, stick it like a millimeter or so to the inside of your foot. Or you can take a shoe, put something here. And now you can do your toe yoga, right? And you can see, am I doing this properly, right? By stabilizing my forefoot am I keeping my joints aligned, my rear foot as I'm moving the forefoot, or am I doing this, right? And actually pushing into the ball, right? So give yourself enough of a visual to make sense of what are you actually doing or not doing in terms of how you steer and control your foot. I teach this all the time. I've taught this literally thousands and thousands of times to different people and huge groups, right? I know about 85% of you right now probably go, there's no way in hell I can do this, okay? I can promise you, you can, right? We just talked about the fact that new skills are expensive. I know this feels hard and feels really weird, but you need to be able to have this skill, okay? It is very, very critical. Those of you who feel like you, quote, can't do this, your homework for the next week is to do 3 minutes on each foot every day. I asked for 3 minutes on each foot. I didn't ask for an hour. Everyone has 3 minutes per foot you can donate the next few days, okay? Get this control down. If you have a hard time doing it, it's not because your foot's weak. It's because you don't have the connection between your brain and your feet. And that's why you're at this course today. Okay. So please dedicate the time, dedicate the awareness to build this control. I know all of you can. I've taught this thousands of times. And guess what? In thousands and thousands of cases, everyone figures this out. But it's not going to happen in 10 seconds. Sometimes we'll need to work on this. All right. That's exercise 1. It's called toe yoga. It's about learning to drive the big toe down without collapsing the arch and separating out our big toe control and our little toe control. The reason why we're doing this is to rehash this mechanically. Remember we said your big toe is totally different form and purpose and alignment than little toes, okay? Further, those of you who like to know about neurophysiology, we have an area in our brain that's dedicated just to your big toe. Not just your feet, but your big toe in your foot, okay? We don't have as good of a mind map in our homunculus in our brain for our little toes, right? So that's why it is so important that we tap into that wiring that's there and build that connection.
Yeah. It's not called the great toe connection.
Yeah, exactly. It's not just a pretty great toe, it's a great toe.
Yeah, it's a great toe.
All right.
Good
So
done.
that's number one. Let's go to number two. Okay, so I asked everybody to get a piece of TheraBand or resistance band, right? So I have mine on this little rack over here to the side. And so you can go put yours on a doorknob, that's fine. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to hold it a little bit low to keep it all in the camera because I want you to see what my foot's doing. So what I'm going to do is, you're going to set yourself up. I'm going to show you my left foot just because my band is anchored to my right. Okay, so I want you to be, we'll say everybody go on left foot. I want you to anchor your band on the right side. So you can find a doorknob or a chair. I'll give you a few seconds to tie your band somewhere so you can pull on it. You don't have to pull with 500 pounds of pressure. Okay, just, you know, a little bit of tension is fine. Okay, so if you get that tied up somewhere, right? So let's now go to the exercise, right? So what I'm going to do is, again, if you're somebody who had our mobility blocks from before, you've already done your calcaneus mode. You've already done your lacrosse ball and foot release, okay? And then you sense, when I stand on one leg, it feels nice to get it across my foot. Great. Now we're ready to do some functional things, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my band. I'm going to stand on my left leg, right? Again, I'm holding this low, as you can see this. Normally, hands would be kind of up about chest height, okay? But trying to keep our camera in view. So I'm standing on the left leg. I'm using that same key before. I drive that big toe down to the ground. And all I'm going to do is twist small to left about 15, 20 degrees for my shoulders. And then right about 15, 20 degrees. So again, left 15, 20 degrees, right 15, 20 degrees. Left, right. Okay. And the reason I'm doing this, you can see how as you twist away, right, from the band attachment point over the right side, it forces that big toe, that ball of foot, to drive down into the ground. And then I'm relaxing as I come back in, right? So twist away, twist back towards, right? And again, you'll start to feel some things wake up. And if you find yourself way on the outside or collapsing inward, right, just take a second, give yourself a little bit more, stability. Some people may find that you need to give yourself some more help to get control. So what you can do is take your same band we had, right? I'm just gonna put my hand on top of this foam roller, and now as I pivot, right, I'm just using this foam roller as a little bit of extra help, okay, to give me an extra point of contact. Because I know a lot of people, when I took you on one leg, you just get real nervous and start to shift all over the place, right? So giving yourself a little bit more contact can actually help learn some of these basic skills, okay? I can't emphasize, I know people think, I'm already really good, I'm a great athlete. I know you have a great engine, but your stability is the problem, and your VO2 max is not going to help that, okay? So I want to make sure we're focused on specificity and not just focusing on just knocking out reps. So that's called the foot band twist exercise. It's one of my favorites because it does kind of cue you over the inside of the foot so well, and creates that sense of where stability comes from. Okay, those who do that, I usually go for about 40 repetitions. So it takes about 2 minutes, guys. It's not long at all, okay? All right, so number 3, we're gonna use our same foam roller again. And this is called the foam roller drill. And so what I'm gonna show you how to do is to link concepts, right? Lawrence has worked on a bunch of, again, spine and hip awareness with you guys. I've talked a lot about saying the feet, and guess what? We don't treat just hips or just feet, we treat people. And so right now, we're gonna show you a way to integrate our feet with our hips. So what you're gonna do, I want you to take your foam roll, I'm gonna have you put it between your shins, okay? So you can kind of stand as wide or as narrow as you need to really smash that roller, right? So I'm literally squeezing it pretty hard, right? To smash that roller with my shins, it's below my knees, okay? Everybody see that? Below my knees, I'm smashing that roller. And when you do that, you'll notice that that load really goes to the inside ball of the foot, right? And we also notice your adductors turn on a good bit. Now, here's what we're gonna do. You're gonna put your fingers, on your butt cheeks. What I want you to do is, I want you to squeeze your butt tight, and I want you to twist your thighs outward. And you can see how my knees go from neutral, right, to excellently rotated by using my butt muscles, and by keeping tension on this roller, it's still going to make sure my foot stays down. Because what I don't want to do is rotate out like this. So you see how the inside of my foot came off the ground and lost control of my big toe. A lot of people have been told you want to strengthen your hip muscles. Yes, you do. But again, I want to make sure our brain's getting a message where it's not, this is working my hip, that's working my big toe. We have to steer this whole leg straight. So what we're going to do, we're going to take our foam roll, smashing our shins inward, driving the big toes and ball of feet down to the ground. Hands are on my butt cheeks. So what we're going to do is we're going to twist the thighs outward, let them roll back inward. Outward, roll back inward. Outward, you'll feel some tension in your butt cheeks where your fingers are. Let them roll back inward. That's your glute max doing its job. Outward, roll back inward. Outward, roll back inward. Congratulations. You just did 5 repetitions using your hip muscles to spiral the leg outward. Now we're going to switch it up and do 5 repetitions using our feet to push the arch up to get our thighs to go outward. So, what I cued from before, right? Ball of foot staying on the ground, big toes are here. You have 2 pictures of my face right underneath the big toes. Smash my face down pretty aggressively, okay? And now torque the arch up. And by keeping pressure on that roll, you ensure that you're lifting the arch, right? So we're doing something that looks like doming the arch, right? Without just losing contact of all the feet, okay? So it's a dome, relax, dome, relax, dome, relax. And that doming is so strong, right, that we are lifting the arch up, coming back in for 1, arch up, relax for 2, arch up, down for 3, arch up, 4, arch up, 5. Okay, so now we go back again to the hips, okay? So feet are passengers, hips are drivers. Engage glute muscles, screw those thighs outward and inward, outward and inward, outward and inward, outward, inward, outward, inward. Good job. That's 5 up top. Now, hips are going to be passengers. Feet are going to be drivers. Using our big toes, smash those big toes down on the floor, smash my face, drive the arch up and out, come back in. Drive the arch up and out, come back in. Again, when I move my feet, guess where it's moving? My thigh bones, right? They're all connected. Okay? So what I would have you do is do 5 from the hip, 5 from the feet, and do that maybe for about 2 minutes or so, right? You're just trying to build that connection and teach your brain that we're about controlling the spiral, right? As we walk and run, you've got rotational motion that happens in your body. It's there, right? I just want you to do a better job of controlling it. Okay. So those are 3 exercises that everybody can do that requires no extra equipment, okay? I want to show you one modification you can use. It's something that I developed myself. It's called the Mobo board. And the reason why I made this is because of all the reasons we just talked about and all the things that you guys have perceived as pretty difficult just now. A lot of people have a hard time really getting into their big toe without compensating, right? So what I did was I made a platform, right? Because those of you ever try to balance on those soft, squishy pads when you walk into your PT clinic, I would ask you to challenge your therapist while you're doing that. And if they say to make it harder, harder is not better. Better is better, okay? To improve your stability, you need to input more information as to where you are into your brain. And if you are on a soft, squishy surface, what happens is you take away sensory feedback. And when you lose that position sense, yeah, balance is harder, but it's not better. You don't learn. So hard surfaces give us consistent feedback. That's why it's a hard tool. The second thing you'll notice is that there is a cutout for your little toes, and there is a platform for your big toe. So Your foot basically would be something like this, right? So I'm giving you contact for your big toe, so this cues you into using the muscles in the toe, the big toe and the arch that we discussed. And those of you who love to kind of curl and kind of grasp with little toes, guess what? There's nothing here for you to use, right? So it cues you pretty quickly to get away from this strategy of compensation and to get into something that works properly. Okay, so I'm going to show you one exercise. We did the same thing we just did, but this will kind of cue you into doing it correctly and kind of teaching your brain how to get into those muscles in your feet properly. So we're going to do the same thing before. I'm going to take, those of you who have a Mobo board, right? I'm going to set this up for my, my left foot. And one board does both feet, by the way. They just switch by these fins. Sorry. This over here.
They are amazing. You need one.
So, put the fins. Those of you who have a Mobo board, I'm going to put my fins by 2 of my 4 slots right now. And so what I'm going to do is same exercise we just did, right? So I'm putting my big toe up on the board. You can see how the board pivots, right? So for the first exercise, my job is to keep the board nice and quiet, not to kick it out back and forth, right? So hands still go back on this band, and I'm twisting away and twisting toward, twisting away and twisting toward, twisting away, twisting toward. And just to show you this as you're moving, right? So you can see how this board pivots. And this board doesn't pivot front to back. It doesn't pivot side to side. It actually pivots in a diagonal. The reason why it pivots in a diagonal is because your subtalar joint, which is the joint inside your foot that you actually pronate and supinate around. Remember, those are just normal, healthy motions, right? That occurs at about 45 degrees. I designed the board to pivot around your anatomy versus just making it wobbly and unstable. Wobble boards that wobble in all directions, again, they're harder, but they don't train you to move around the way your foot was designed. So that's why this is a nice tool, right? So that same little foot bend twist exercise that we did, you can do this on your Mobo, right? And it helps you drive in that big toe more effectively. Because those of you who want to go on the outside of your foot will notice it kicks over and you lose contact and stability, right? And if you collapse too far forward, it's going to collapse with you. So it's going to teach you and train you to figure out how much control and coordination do I need to build in the foot before I start to see things fall apart. So same exercise I showed you before, right? Where you use the Mobo board greatly improves the torsion of your foot. I should note that you can't work on torsional and twisting control of the foot without also challenging rotation control of the hip. So guess what? By putting something under your foot, you actually increase rotational training through our hip complex as well. So I always tell people, we're not treating just a muscle, we're treating a movement, and this kind of builds upon that, right? So that's one exercise I love to use with the rocker board. Next one is an exercise I call the pass around. The way it looks is quite simple. It's actually quite challenging for most people. I'm going to grab this 10-pound kettlebell here because I have one. But at home, you can use a gallon of water. I mean, you can use anything you want, really. But something about maybe 5-10 pounds is great. And all you do is you're going to stand on that board, right? And you're going to take the weight and just pass from one hand to the other. So all we're doing is just basically shifting balance point from outside to inside. But this really forces your foot to have to learn and feel to what? Drive down to the first ray, right? That big toe, to keep things nice and solid and stable. A lot of you are going to basically be here, right? And be here and falling over. Build the confidence, trust, and awareness to the foot, right? That foot needs to give from the ground up control to our brain. So I love this exercise. It's super simple. I usually had to go for time, not reps on these. Again, 2 minutes, just back and forth. Okay? So there's a bunch of exercises on our website. If you go to moboboard.com, but I'm just kind of showing you 3 today that are super helpful. All right, the last one is what I call foot rocks, right? So I think I made the point today, feet aren't bricks, right? They're dynamic. They need to move. And so, again, one of the things about this Mobo board is your foot moves, so I want to teach it and train it how to move. So the foot rock exercise, we actually do 2 different patterns. Right now, I still have these fins in the even slots 4 and 2. They're all labeled on the board. And I can get on here, and I can stand, right? And so my goal is to be to shift from outside to the number 1, right? So from the 3 to the 1. So I'm just teaching my brain to control the motions of pronation, supination by very specifically moving my foot versus just wobbling around up top. Those of you who've done stuff like this on BOSU boards and on wobble boards where things are completely unstable, you'll notice a lot of hip stuff. Hip stuff is great, but that's not why we're here today. We're here today to teach you to kind of find and identify with your foot. So this is a great way to train very specific patterns in terms of pronation and supination. So I'm just rocking the foot back and forth. Like we said before, if this is too challenging for you, you still need to be able to do this. So grab your foam roll, right? Give yourself a contact point if you need to, and be able to work back and forth here too, okay? So again, make the exercise as easy as it needs to be doable, right? So I usually go for about 20 reps or so in that direction, and then we take our fins and we just push them out, okay? And we now going to put them in, we're still going to go same foot up. We're going to put the fins in the odd slots 1 and 3, okay? And what this does is, right, this will now have you working in a perpendicular motion to that normal axis, right? So now we're going to go out to in, right? So working perpendicular axis, right, teaches you to control the perineal muscle group on the outside, right? So we're just building that support and awareness, right, through these muscles on the outside that actually wrap under the foot over here and help root down that big toe, okay? So again, both of these motions are important. Those of you with chronic ankle sprains, this motion right here where your outside of the foot comes up feels really strange to a lot of people because again, from years of spraining, you've been like this, right? And so I'm trying to teach your brain, not only can you move over here, but guess what? It's okay to be there. And so to kind of bring this all home, some of you we noticed today had issues with rear foot mobility, right? If you don't train your brain to use mobility over and over again, guess what? You'll go back to guarding and cheating your motion again. So training your brain to use full motion at the rear foot, well, guess what? Keep full motion at your rear foot. Because my goal is to make sure that we're doing things that are constructive and don't have you doing exercises for an hour a day rest of your life, right? These tools are great to use in small doses. Everything I gave to you today was like what? A few reps here, 2 minutes here, right? If you do too many repetitions, your brain gets tired. And when your brain gets tired, we lose awareness, we lose concentration, and we don't get benefit. So I want to keep things less on the volume, more high in the quality aspect.
Amazing, Jay. Amazing.
Right. That was probably a good brain dump. Lawrence, what do you think?
Amazing, Jay. Thank you. Can you hear me, right? The last exercise is also fantastic for mobilizing.
Lawrence, I can't hear you.
You can't hear me? Okay. Let me. Can you hear me now? Oh. No, Jay's gone into the small. I don't know why you can't hear me. Can you hear me now?
Back?
Can you hear me? Tanya can hear me. It's just you, Jay.
Lawrence, I'm still out on audio.
Yes, Jay, it's
Can
only
you guys hear me?
We can
You
hear.
can hear me? Okay. All right.
Yes.
All right. So sorry guys. This is the the easy part is teaching all this stuff. The hard part is dealing with technology limitations, right? All right. I tell you what, we probably have a little snafu. I'm glad you guys can hear me. I can't hear Lawrence. But I tell you what, that's kind of all the information I want to talk about today. What I would ask you to do is practice, right? I know Lawrence gives you guys things to work on, and it's, one day is not going to change the world. Take some time with these, right? You have this access to this course again. Watch it again. Okay. I know some of you are probably, wow, that was a lot. Yeah, I know it was, but again, I want to try and give you the tools that you need to succeed. And I hope that was helpful. So again, those of you who have mobility blocks on that screening test, do those blocks first. if you don't have the blocks, go straight to stability work. Okay. While I do hope you get a Mobo for sure, I would advocate, this is non-negotiable. Everyone needs to be doing some aspect of foot and ankle stability training, and whether you use a Mobo or not, I want to put this in part of your practice. As a thank you for everybody today, we have a code. So if you go to moboboard.com and you type in at checkout, you type in InnerRunner20, you'll get 20% off, and that's good for a week. So it expires at midnight on Thursday next week. So you're welcome to use that. And if you want to follow us on Instagram at mobo.board, I try and post lots of good info on there. And again, always giving you different tips and tricks to improve your foot and ankle control. And also, again, there's a bunch more stuff on geeky biomechanics for those of you who love that type of thing. So I hope this was fun. And I want to thank Lawrence and thank all of you for hanging out this morning.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you. You're the man. Yeah, bye.
Bye.
Cool. Okay, so thanks everyone. I told you, John, isn't Jay just wonderful? Just like knowledge coming out of his head. I'm going to go, just to tie it in, that last exercise is really good for supporting your calcaneal mobilization. And I'll chat to Jay afterwards. Interestingly enough, when I first met Jay wasn't big on calcaneal alignment. And when I treated him and helped him with his knee, one of the things we did was calcaneal alignment. And I was like, yeah. But anyway, he's amazing, just a fountain of knowledge. And that's the fountainhead. That's this guy you can trust and back. So please support him and follow it. He's just the man, Jay. Thank you. We're really, really grateful. Okay.
Thanks,
guys. Thank you, everyone. The questions we'll try and answer. Maybe we'll email the questions. Okay. So I know there's a couple of questions that Jay didn't answer. Some of them. Okay. So some of the questions. If I have a look at the questions, guys, I just think, like Jay says, focus on the mechanics and the problems will start to melt away. So we don't really want to get into diagnosis of specific stuff. Why don't you all just try doing Jay's exercises, see how it goes, see if things don't improve. He did give you recommendations. I know Jay's like on fast forward, man. It's just knowledge streaming out of you and you're driving pretty fast when you're hanging with Jay. Try this, play it back. It'll start to make sense. We'll flesh it out, and if you guys have got concerns later, you can kind of just mail me, and then we'll try and answer sort of individual questions and stuff. But I really just think just focus on the process and see what happens first, because now your brain is just like blown. You're not going to remember all of this. You're going to have to play it back, do it, play it back, do it, play it back, do it, and really get a strong sense of it, so that then you'll find your questions are way more sort of on point. Okay, so I think we're going to do that. You did answer the questions, and then just thanks, guys. And yeah, look out for the next masterclass. We're kind of figuring out who we're going to get, but this one was a keeper. So thanks everyone, and take care. Move well, run well, feel well. And I'm so glad that, I do focus on the app and let the extremities take care of themselves. I think also if you try doing some of Jay's stuff before, let's say, the Inner Runner workshop, or if you've been working on my stuff, it's a whole lot harder when your upper body's malleable and soft. It doesn't bully your foot. But again, it's top down or bottom down. I work from center out. So it's been a wonderful compliment to all the work that I do, and it's just like a glove. So thanks everyone, and thanks for all your support. Try and share this with your friends. You want your PT to watch this. You want your chiro to watch this. You want your guru to watch this. You want people to know, like, this is not going to change. Again, we talk about this knowledge that lasts for 100 years. In 100 years' time, all of this is relevant. So it ain't going to change, and that's Jay is the fountainhead. Okay, he's the source. The other people are learning Jay's knowledge and maybe tweaking it. He's pretty close to the core of foot and mechanics. Okay. Anyway, thanks everyone. Have a wonderful day, and thanks for the love and support. And get this one out there, please.